I spent 40 years as an accountant for a trucking company in Ohio. That kind of work teaches you one thing above everything else. Pay attention to the details. Numbers don't lie. Balance sheets don't lie. People, unfortunately, do. When my husband Arthur passed away 5 years ago, he left me our home, a solid colonial brick house in a quiet suburb of Dayton, completely paid off. It was mine, and it was secure. 2 years ago, my son Vance moved in with his wife Chloe. The plan was simple. They'd save money and eventually build their own life. I didn't mind. He's my son. You make room for family. But things shifted slowly. Chloe barely spoke to me unless it was about money or chores. My old keepsakes quietly disappeared into the attic, replaced by cold modern furniture that felt nothing like home. I said nothing. I just watched, and I kept notes in my head the way accountants do. One evening at dinner, the silence in the kitchen was heavier than usual. Chloe was tapping away on her phone while Vance stirred his soup like a man waiting for bad news. "Hazel," she said without looking up, "we need to talk about the utilities. Your share is way too high. You barely use the upstairs anymore." I set my spoon down slowly. "The split stays exactly as it's laid out in our agreement," I said. Her eyes narrowed. That was the first spark of something she'd been building for a long time. The following Thursday, I did some deep cleaning while they were both at work. When I stepped into the home office, a room that had slowly become Chloe's territory, I noticed a thick blue binder lying wide open on the side table. I'm not a person who snoops, but when strange financial documents are left open in my own house, I don't look away either. I walked over. It was a detailed breakdown of student loans and consumer debt, all under Chloe's maiden name. The total at the bottom nearly stopped my breath. Almost $85,000. An elite private college she never finished, and a handful of maxed-out credit cards. Vance had never said a single word to me about any of it. Underneath the binder was a yellow notepad in Chloe's handwriting. 3 figures scribbled neatly. The estimated market value of my house, my monthly Social Security income, and Arthur's savings account. Everything clicked into place. The cold shoulder. The constant hints that the house was too big for one older woman. Vance's tortured look at the dinner table every night. They didn't see me as a mother or a mother-in-law. They saw me as a financial solution to a problem they'd created themselves. I closed the binder and left it exactly as I found it. My heart was steady. My mind was already made up. When you spot a massive deficit on a balance sheet, you don't sit around waiting for bankruptcy to arrive. You act before the other side even knows you've figured out their game. That afternoon, I called my financial advisor. Friday morning, I was sitting across from my bank manager by 10 o'clock sharp. Deep had known me for decades. He used to handle Arthur's business accounts. I asked him to transfer my entire liquid savings into a brand new, completely private account that only I could access. Vance still held an old power of attorney for emergencies. With one signature, I revoked it. "Are you looking to reinvest this into a portfolio, Miss Thompson?" Deep asked politely. "No," I said. "I'm putting it into something tangible. Real estate." When I got home that afternoon, Chloe was already there, and she'd rearranged the entire living room without asking. Arthur's armchair, his absolute favorite spot in the whole house, had been shoved into a dark corner next to the radiator. A sleek, designer sofa was sitting front and center in front of the television. Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway holding 2 coffee mugs with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought it was time for a fresh look, Hazel. That old chair just doesn't fit the aesthetic anymore." I didn't respond. I took off my coat, hung it in the closet, walked into the living room, grabbed one end of that brand new designer sofa, and pushed it firmly out of the way. Then I slid Arthur's armchair right back into its spot. Chloe froze in the doorway. "This is my house, Chloe," I said quietly. "As long as I live here, I decide where the furniture goes. If you don't like the aesthetic, you're more than welcome to pack your bags." For days after that, the house went ice cold. Chloe stopped speaking to me unless she had to. Vance drifted through the hallways like a ghost. I caught him alone in the laundry room one Sunday evening. "Vance," I said. He jumped slightly. "I cleaned up my bank accounts. The old emergency fund is closed." He dropped a shirt and stared at me. "Why would you do that?" "Mom, what if something happens?" I thought we were all handling things together as a family. We are a family, I replied, pouring fabric softener into the dispenser. But finances are personal. You're married now. You have your own priorities, and I have mine. He swallowed hard. I could see the panic in his eyes. He knew about Chloe's debt. He knew their plan had just hit a wall. The next morning, Chloe's car was gone extra early. I sat alone at the kitchen table with my tea and newspaper. Right there beside my cup was a glossy brochure for a luxury retirement community in Indianapolis. A single-story condo with assisted living options. A sticky note in Chloe's handwriting read, "Wouldn't this be perfect for retirement? So much easier to manage than a giant house." I folded my newspaper, picked up the brochure, and dropped it straight into the recycling bin. They thought they could move me around like a piece on a chessboard. What they didn't realize was that I controlled the board. Over the next 2 weeks, I used the frozen silence in the house to push my own plans forward. I found a charming little townhouse online in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Renovated, beautifully maintained, and move-in ready. It was exactly what I needed. Far enough from Dayton to give me real breathing room, but not so far that I'd be cutting every tie. I took a day off and made the drive up to see it. The owner was a kind older gentleman whose wife had passed. He walked me through every room with quiet pride. The hardwood floors were gorgeous. The kitchen was updated. The little back patio had just enough room for a few rose bushes. Everything about it felt honest. "I'd like to make an all-cash offer," I told him as we stood in the living room after the tour. "No financing contingencies, no bank delays. If the paperwork is clean, we can close with the title company next week." The relief on his face was immediate. We shook hands on it right there. Driving back down the highway that evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. A deep, quiet sense of freedom. When I got home, I heard raised voices from the living room before I even had my key out of the door. "She has to do it, Vance." Chloe's voice was tight and shaking. "The bank isn't giving us any more extensions. If your mother doesn't sign the house over or give us the cash soon, the interest is going to drown us." I stood still in the dark hallway and listened. No sadness, just the cold confirmation of everything I already knew. I didn't walk into that room. I went straight upstairs to bed. The next morning, I brewed my tea and sat down at the table as if the world were perfectly ordinary. Chloe came downstairs with dark circles under her eyes. She didn't bother with pleasantries. She slammed a manila folder onto the table beside my cup. "Hazel, we need to cut to the chase. We talked to a financial consultant." Vance hovered in the kitchen doorway behind her, staring at the floor. "If we take out an equity loan against this house, we can consolidate our high-interest debt. It gives everyone a tax advantage. We just need you to sign here to approve the line of credit." I looked down at the paperwork. It was a clean attempt to place an $85,000 lien directly against my home. The exact amount of her debt. They honestly believed I would sign a legally binding document without reading every line of it. "No," I said, and took a sip of my tea. "What do you mean, no?" Chloe's voice cracked. "You don't understand. This is what's best for the family. Vance, say something." Vance stepped forward, eyes still fixed on the tile. "Mom, it really would take a massive weight off our shoulders. Things are just really tight right now." I looked at my son for a long moment. It hurt to see how far he drifted from himself. But pity doesn't balance a ledger. "I am not signing anything," I said. I stood up, placed my mug in the dishwasher, and turned around one last time. "And this conversation is over." Chloe snatched the folder and stormed out of the house, slamming the front door so hard the glass panes rattled in their frames. Thursday's closing in Grand Rapids was smooth and professional. The deeds were reviewed, the signatures witnessed, and the wire transfer went through cleanly from my private account. The townhouse was officially mine. The keys felt heavy and cool in my palm. I drove over to the property alone, unlocked the door, and simply stood there breathing in the scent of fresh paint and clean wood. No tension, no scheming. No one standing in the corner quietly calculating my net worth. On the way back to Dayton, I stopped at a moving company I'd known for years through my work in logistics. The owner smiled warmly when I walked in. "Hazel, good to see you. What can I do for you?" "I need a crew and a truck for Saturday morning, 7 o'clock sharp." I said. Small move, just my personal furniture and belongings. The heavy appliances stay. I need it fast, quiet, and completely professional. You got it, he said, logging it into the schedule without hesitation. That evening, Chloe and Vance were hunched over a laptop at the kitchen table when I got home, barely noticing me come through the door. They were so buried in their own financial quicksand that they weren't paying attention to anything happening around them. They still believed they could eventually wear me down. They had no idea my bags were already packed in my mind. I went upstairs and quietly began placing my most important documents and cherished keepsakes into 2 large duffel bags. Saturday was coming. At exactly 7 in the morning, the heavy air brakes of a moving truck broke the stillness of the neighborhood. The truck backed straight into my driveway. I was already dressed and sitting at the kitchen table when Vance stumbled downstairs in his sweatpants, completely disoriented. Chloe was right behind him, hurriedly tying her robe as 2 movers in uniform carried a stack of wardrobe boxes through the front door I'd already unlocked. What the hell is going on? Chloe shrieked. Hazel, who are these people? I turned around slowly. They're movers, I said. They're here for my things. I'm moving out today. Vance's jaw dropped. Moving out to where, Mom? Grand Rapids, I said. My new house, paid for in full, out of my own funds. The exact money you two were so busy counting. The color drained from Chloe's face, then flooded back in a deep, furious red. In that moment, she understood. Every plan she'd built, every manipulation, every carefully placed pressure, it had all collapsed at once. The money she'd been depending on was gone, tied up in my future, permanently out of her reach. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice breaking. That money was supposed to pay off my loans. You are ruining our lives. The movers paused for half a second, exchanged a glance, and went right back to work. They carried Arthur's armchair past her and out the front door without missing a step. Vance stood completely still. The truth was finally out in the open, not through lawyers or confrontations, but through Chloe's own rage, tearing the mask right off. Your loans are your responsibility, I said quietly, picking up my purse. I am not your bank, and I am not liable for your mistakes. I worked hard for 40 years. This house remains my property, and your lease here is terminated effective at the end of the month. You have 4 weeks to find something you can actually afford. You can't do this to us, Chloe sobbed, tears streaming. Vance is your son. We don't have money for a deposit and debt payments at the same time. I looked past her to Vance. He was watching me, his face a mix of deep shame and something that looked almost like grief. He knew I was right. He knew they had pushed me too far. Vance is my son and I love him, I said softly. But he is also a grown man. It's time for him to carry the weight of the choices he made. I walked past both of them without looking back. The move was over in a matter of hours. As my car pulled out of the driveway, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. Chloe was sitting on the porch steps with her face buried in her hands. Vance stood beside her with his shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. It was a sad sight, but it was the math of their own making. They had tried to build their lives on my foundation without contributing a single dollar of equity. It's been 2 months now. I'm sitting in my new living room in Grand Rapids. The rose bushes out back survived the first frost of the season. The house has a wonderful, peaceful quiet to it. The kind you can't find when you're constantly on guard. My phone doesn't ring very often, but Vance called me yesterday. He sounded different, steadier, more like the man I raised. He told me they found a smaller apartment, that Chloe picked up a second part-time job to start paying down the principal on her debt, and that they're sticking to a strict repayment plan now. He didn't ask me for a single dime. That alone told me more than any words could. I told him he's welcome to come visit me on his own this spring. We need to rebuild what we have as 2 adults on equal footing, without a bank account casting a shadow over everything. Whether Chloe ever earns a place in my life again is genuinely doubtful. But honestly, it isn't necessary. I pick up my tea and look out the window at the quiet Michigan street. I didn't waste my money. I gave myself the most valuable thing a person can own in their later years: independence, peace of mind, and a home that belongs entirely to me. The books are balanced.